fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist acts.
Several shots were fired as President Kennedy's motorcade passed through downtown Dallas.
None of us will ever forget this day. Yet we go forward to defend freedom and all that is good and just in our world.
This is Houston. Say again, please. Houston, we've had a problem.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
I have a dream. My four little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
Welcome to the Hagmann Daily Show, weekdays 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Time. And now your hosts, Joe Hagmann and Jon Robberson.
Hello and welcome to this Friday edition of the Hagmann Daily Show. Today is Friday, March 23rd, 2018, and we got a great show for you today. Congressional candidate out of Idaho, Michael Snyder, is going to be our guest, and he's going to join us in just a few moments, and we're looking forward to speaking with him, getting an update from his campaign, and to hear how it is his battle is going with a primary right around the corner. And this is one of the, at least at the Hagmann Report, one of the matches that we are closely watching, because we do believe Michael Snyder has a very good chance to win this seat. But before we get to him, just a few things want to touch on. One, we have the spending bill, which is just this huge pork and barrel omnibus bill where it's 2,300 pages. Nobody has enough time to read it. The Drudge says lawmakers have 1,000 minutes to read 2,300 pages. And there's so much wrong with this bill. Senate and the House have passed it. The president, interestingly, has threatened to veto it, although I don't think he will. I was in the car a lot this morning. I had a chance to listen to some CNN, listen to some Laura Ingraham, listen to some Bloomberg, and it seems like the left really wants to get this through. And if the left gets this through with all the concessions that the president is giving them, that this is going to, I think, as Laura Ingraham said, lead to a very, this blue wave on the midterm elections possibly. And then that could lead to the impeachment of the president. And this is one of the interesting things from the today on listening to the radio. Laura Ingraham had so many callers. So many people were, she was taking one after another to get their opinion. Should the president veto or pass this bill? Not one caller, and there was at least 10 or 15 I heard, not one caller said that he should pass this bill or needed to pass this bill. And I guess we'll know possibly before this show is over, as they're set to announce their decision, I think at 1 o'clock. But John, I'm going to bring you on here. What do you think with the latest on this budget bill?
Well, there's so much to unpack, and we got started with it yesterday. Greetings and God's blessings to everybody joining us today here on Friday, March 23rd. And Joe, I'm just going to define for our listeners what you and I spoke about a couple hours ago, and that is that we must keep in mind that President Donald Trump, at the end of the day, has many conservative values, but has been noted by a number of political pundits, writers, etc., as really being a populist president. So this is what Merriam-Webster.com has to say about the word populist. It's a member of a political party claiming to represent the common people, especially, often capitalized, a member of a U.S. political party formed in 1891, primarily to represent agrarian interests and to advocate the free coinage of silver and government control of monopolies. And then definition number 2, Joe, is a believer in the rights, wisdom, or virtues of the common people. And I thought that was interesting because I think I misinterpreted populist as essentially meaning doing that which is popular for the greater good of everyone concerned. And so I think somewhere in that definition of populist, we've as much as we love our president, we've really got to keep an eye on the second year of his administration. I have some very serious concerns about this budget.
Well, and rightfully so, as $1.3 trillion it funds sanctuary cities, it funds Planned Parenthood. It does not fund the border wall, only a few miles it funds to build the wall, and then about 100 miles of repair. But one of the things also that President Trump had said with his tweet is that he may veto the spending bill because there was no wall funding and because DACA is not addressed. And I find that interesting, that he has to remind the lawmakers, especially the Democratic lawmakers who were so gung-ho about DACA, to include it in this bill. So it's a very interesting story. A lot's riding on this decision. I'm going to bring Michael Snyder on now, but a lot's riding on the president's decision and his actions. This is what he was elected for, to stop this kind of wasteful spending. And one of the things Rand Paul said that he is right on the money is that this is no way to govern with these spending bills. And there's so much waste in here, so much that we don't need. And it should be a simple bill, 10, 20, 30 pages. It does fund the military, but when you see all these other things inside of it that are bloating this bill, some of them have nothing to do with the spending. This is problematic, and it's going to be very problematic for the Trump administration. And Rand Paul also said that conservatives are only fiscally conservatives when they are not in power. And I wonder if there is some truth to that. Let's ask our guest, Michael Snyder. He is in the middle of a congressional run, and we're going to get an update on all this stuff. Michael, welcome back to the Hagmann Daily Show.
Thank you. Can you hear me this morning? How are you guys doing?
We're doing
great. Mike, we're doing great. Thank you for taking time out of your busy candidacy to join us. I'll just mention quickly that Michael Snyder, in addition to being a great friend of the Hagmann Report for many years, is also the editor-in-chief and founder of the economiccollapseblog.com. So what better guest could we have join us here for a few moments today to unpack some of this budget for our listeners? And then, of course, we'll get into Michael's candidacy. Michael, what do you think about this budget?
Oh, I'm so horrified, guys. This just represents everything that's wrong with the government. And, it's the Republicans that are in control of this budget-busting bill. And already, since the day Barack Obama first set into the White House, all the way up through today, through the early stages of the Trump administration, since that time when Barack Obama first set foot in the White House, we've been adding to the national debt at a rate of more than $100 million an hour. That means every single hour of every single day, 24 hours a day. Since that point, we've been literally stealing more than $100 million an hour from our children and our grandchildren and all future generations of Americans. And now this bill, more than 2,000 pages, $1.3 trillion, absolutely absurd. And it was the plan was put together by Paul Ryan, who I've pledged I'll never vote for the Speaker of the House. And, there's funding for Planned Parenthood in there, all kinds of liberal priorities. But then the things conservatives want are nowhere to be found. And so, it's completely right. Once the Republicans are out of power, then all of a sudden they try to object and become fiscal conservatives, although they always gave in to the Democrats in the end anyway. But look at them. They're being totally irresponsible. It's a complete and utter nightmare. They're betraying the American people. And I'm glad President Trump this morning is threatening to veto this bill because it needs to be vetoed. It's a nightmare.
Yeah, it is. And one of the things that I was looking for that Rand Paul pointed out about this bill, just to give people an idea of how messed up some of this stuff is, as I have not read the bill, so I'm only relying on other people's reporting and information on what's in there. But Rand Paul shows that there is funding for border security in Tunisia and Jordan, but not here in the U.S. The bill funds all of the Democratic's pet projects and spends less than 1% on border security barriers with no wall. Senator Rand Paul on Tucker Carlson last night went on to discuss this, and folks, you can find that on YouTube. But he points out that there is funding in this bill to fund the border security in the countries of Jordan and Tunisia. And that's just one of the many things that are in this bill. And I couldn't agree with you more, Michael. This is just out of control. The president needs to put his foot down. And we need, I don't know what it's going to take. Do you believe that if this bill is passed, as it is right now, that this will have a very negative impact for the GOP in the 2018 midterms?
Hugely, because there's a lot of principled conservatives out there, and I've already seen people tweeting and and on social media saying, "Hey, if President Trump signs this bill, I'm not going to vote for him," which is a tragedy. But that's how angry a lot of conservatives are. And then, of course, 2018 is going to be all about Trump. And so if people are like, "Well, I'm fed up with Trump. I don't like Trump. I don't like what they've been doing, how they've been betraying us conservatives." We've seen conservatives stay home. We saw it in 2012 with Mitt Romney. We saw it in even 2008 with John McCain. If conservatives stay home and are not energized and are sick and tired of their own party, when we get to 2018, we'll get slaughtered by the Democrats. We'll get slaughtered. So giving into the Democrats is not going to win us any votes. It's not going to energize our base, which is the key, especially in the primaries, but it's also so key in midterm elections, energizing your own supporters, your own base. I mean, this is literally suicide for the Republican Party. I don't know what they're thinking. And this is the reason why I want to get to Washington. Other people want to get to Washington and stand up and raise hell about this kind of a bill, because this is why people are so sick and tired, because they come around during election season and they say, "Oh, we're good conservatives. We're going to get the budget under control. We're going to do this. We're going to do that." Then they go to Washington and they betray us over and over again.
Yeah, they do. And I want to ask you this. Do you believe if there is a Democratic majority in the Congress and the Senate that they will move to impeach the president if that happens?
100%. Oh, yeah. I mean, they're already talking about it. Yeah, if they take over both houses, they're going to impeach Trump. And, it won't even really matter if he's guilty of anything or not. They're going to do it. They're just so excited about that possibility they can hardly stand it. And the thing is, Republicans, if they would have stuck to a conservative agenda, they could have done very well. But now conservatives feel betrayed. And when conservatives feel betrayed, a lot of them stay home. And so, this budget bill could be a huge consideration in the ultimate, impeachment of Donald Trump, because, conservatives just aren't going to go out and vote if they're not excited.
You're right, and they won't, and they're not going to tolerate, all this stuff that the president ran against, and basically the reason he got elected. The economy, illegal immigration and border security, healthcare was another reason, and to drain the swamp, which was his goal. But he will, I guess, become part of the swamp if he passes this bill, and to put the country $1 trillion in debt from this bill is just unimaginable. And I think I heard, was it yesterday, that somebody in Congress said they spend $1 million a minute to keep the government funded. And that, I'm sure it's more than that. And that is crazy. And this bill is not going to help that. But Michael, we don't have to spend the whole time talking about how bad this bill is. I want to get into your campaign. And folks, if you want to go to michaelsnyderforcongress.com. There you can donate. You can find out all the information. It's got a great website. How is your campaign going? And your biggest challenge is coming up in the primaries in May. Is that correct?
Yeah. In our district, because I'm running in Idaho's 1st congressional district, which is half the state because we're a low population state. And so we only have 2 members of the House of Representatives. So my district runs from the top of the Idaho Panhandle in the north, all the western counties, down past Boise, all the way to the southern border of the state. So it's a huge district, takes like 10 or 12 hours to drive the whole thing, been putting tons of miles on the vehicle. But the good news here is that the campaign is going really well. People are super energized. Of course, I had a really solid base of support coming in from people who know me through the alternative media and my work and, all the things I've done. So those people were always with me. But in terms of overall name recognition in the district, we were a bit behind a couple of the other, more seasoned professional politicians. But the good news is now we've gotten new numbers. Now our name recognition is running neck and neck with the 2 other top guys in terms of name recognition. So it's a super close race between the 3 of us. We're the ones where our numbers have been surging. We have the momentum, and so we're very excited. But literally, we're less than 60 days away till May 15th, and that's for all the marbles, because whoever wins this Republican primary, because we're such a Republican district, such a conservative district, that whoever wins the primary is going to be the next member of Congress. So it's either me or two other like mainstream rhino kind of ordinary Republicans. So we're just trying to encourage everyone. If you live here, come and get involved all over the country. Please, help us out and donate and get involved, because we want to focus on the races that are winnable. And I know you guys have had lots of people on in recent weeks who are running, and a lot of great people. Unfortunately, some of them, just are in situations where, it looks like they can't possibly win. But in our race, literally, we don't know who's going to win. It's super, super close. It could go to any of the three of us less than 60 days from now. So whoever works the hardest and gets the most support is going to win. And we're literally working 24 hours a day.
Well, I'm excited. And John, you can jump in here, but I just want to say this, Michael. We have had a number of great guests on, and John has done a great job of getting all these different people who are running against establishment politicians in Washington. But I told John this before the show. Of all the people we've brought on, you, in my opinion, have the best chance of winning. And I do believe you're going to win. So, I love your website. Everybody go to michaelsnyderforcongress.com. It's the best website I've seen a politician put together yet. And you got great pictures of your family on here too, which is awesome. And it lays out very simply what kind of platform Michael Snyder is running on. Go ahead, John.
Oh, thank you, Joe. Michael, this from abcnews.go.com. Republican Rick Saccone concedes to Democrat Connor Lamb in Pennsylvania special election. Now, I bring this up, Michael. I'd like to get your opinion on this. Dan Bongino had some excellent commentary on his program last week, explaining how every district in the country is either a Republican or Democrat leaning district, as indicated by, for example, R+6, D+12. Etc. And the Republican who just conceded to new Congressman Lamb, freshman Congressman Lamb, was actually in an R+ district. And so Dan Bongino's opinion, Michael, was that this is something we really, as the conservatives, as the 62 million that put Donald Trump in the presidency, really need to be concerned about, is that what we saw in the special election in Pennsylvania was a malaise, or maybe a disinterest in the establishment Republican Party, because of course Donald Trump, the man, the dare I say cult of personality to many Americans, the superhero, was of course not running in this special election in Pennsylvania. So Michael, your opinion on how important it is that every single conservative in the country stand front and center against what they're calling the blue wave.
Yeah, and typically in midterm elections, when a new president comes in, the first midterm election of that new presidency, and we saw it with Barack Obama, we saw it with George W. Bush, we've seen it, going all the way back to World War II. When a new president comes in 2 years later, usually there's a surge for the other party because they're energized, and usually the other party picks up a bunch of seats in Congress. And so there's a concern that this is going to happen again. And so conservatives, Republicans need to be concerned about this, because we could lose control of the House. We could lose control of the Senate. We could lose control of both of them. And then President Trump gets impeached, doesn't even make it to 2020. So this is a massive concern. And, in primaries, for example, in the last primary up here in North Idaho, 23% of all registered voters voted in the last primary season. And around the country, a lot of times it'll be a lot less than that, down toward 10%. So if good liberty people that are listening to this program just got fired up, engaged, and went out to the primaries, we could get good people winning these primaries. Then beyond that, in November, we got to go out to the polls. We got to vote. Otherwise, what are we going to do? Because right now just imagine if Hillary Clinton would have won the 2016 election. I've been traveling all over the district, talking with voters, and I'll ask them, what do you think would have happened? And almost always people come back to me and say, Michael, it would have all been over. We would have been finished. Now, what do they mean by that? Do they mean that the United States of America wouldn't have continued to exist in some form beyond that? No, most of them probably believe the U.S. would have continued to exist in some form. But what they mean is that our constitutional republic, which was already hanging by a thread leading into 2016, well, we may not have ever gotten that back again after 8 years, for example, of Hillary Clinton. So I'm going around and trying to get people to understand the constitutional republic is still hanging by a thread. Just because Donald Trump was elected doesn't mean America has been saved. But maybe we have an opportunity, a very narrow window of opportunity to try to take our government back.
Yeah, and you said it so much there that's right on the money. And this is no, we can't rely on one man to drain the swamp. That's an unrealistic expectation. And I've always said, and I do believe, that if we want real change, at least in the political world, it has to be done at the ground level, the local level first, then the state level, then you focus on the federal level. But unfortunately, we have this mentality in this country where the presidency seems to be the most important election, and that's where you get the highest voter turnout. And local elections are dismal in many areas with local turnout, and this is something that needs to change. Michael, how do you recommend go about and how do you go about getting people who don't normally vote to get engaged in elections, and how do we help people understand how important the local elections are versus the national elections?
Yeah, well, so many people out there have just been burned over and over again by like I said earlier, these professional politicians that say good things during an election season, but then, are liars, cheaters, manipulators, and betray us over and over again. So they're like, oh, I've been through this so many times. I've been lied to so many times. How can it be different? And so, one of the big things for us is our live events where people come out and I can share with them for 45 minutes or an hour, and they can start to see my heart and who I am, and then look into my work over the last 7 years and see my track record. And because we need people who are not professional politicians, who are, not trained in deception, to run for office, who are just ordinary citizens who want to be servant leaders and then educate the people, say, hey, we're trying to take over the Republican Party from these other guys, and we're going to call them out. Every rhino has got to go, and we're going to stand up and fight. See, I'm not going to Washington to be a cog in the system. I'm going to Washington to turn the system upside down. And we're working with like 10 or 12 candidates on the state level who are running for the state house in Boise to turn Boise upside down. We literally need to take over the Republican Party, throw the bums out, and we need to do what we're trying to do is something entirely new, and stand up to the leadership of both parties and say we're not going to do it this way anymore.
Very well said. Let me ask you this, Michael. If you lose, what's next for you? I know you're not thinking about losing, but if you do.
Yeah, right. Well, right now that's not really on my mind at all. But for my wife and I, we've said, whatever happens, if however it turns out, we're going to win. Because if we win the election, we go to Washington and we go on this new adventure, a great mission for the country. But if we lose, we get to stay up here in North Idaho, which is much more preferable to Washington, D.C., continue doing what we love, writing and all the work we've been doing all these years, and having impact literally all over the planet, where our websites have been viewed more than 100 million times over the last 7 years. And then, of course, the articles are syndicated all over the country and dozens of others, conservative websites, where they're actually read far more off of our websites than on our websites. So we feel like we win either way. But yeah, we're definitely not thinking about losing.
No, that was kind of an unfair question, but
curveball question.
Yeah, it was. But and I do, as I said before, I do believe you can win, and I do believe you will win. And I know you need as much support as possible. Again, everybody, go to michaelsnyderforcongress.com, share the page on social media, share it, and if you can contribute, definitely do that, because we need as many boots on the ground to fight this fight as possible. Michael, let me ask you this. I see on your website you have all your policies pretty much laid out. Pro-life, pro-liberty, pro-gun, anti-IRS, which is absolutely right when you're talking about a limited government. I want to ask you about the gun debate. We see since the last time we spoke, we've had this Florida shooting and also the shooting in Maryland. And we have seen this huge push by these students in Hollywood and the media for gun control. Do you think that this march and pushing these kids out in front of this agenda was smart on the side of the left? And do you think they'll accomplish anything?
Well, the liberals, they always want to manipulate emotions, not get people, try to not get them thinking rationally, but let's put a bunch of kids out there, get them feeling sorry for things, stir up people's emotions, and see if we can get this gun control agenda move forward. But, the Second Amendment says that the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, period. So any restrictions, anything that they're trying to do with gun control is unconstitutional. In order for it to be constitutional, they'd have to change the U.S. Constitution, which is not going to happen. So all these things being discussed are against the U.S. Constitution. Now, but so many federal gun laws already that we have on the books are unconstitutional. What has happened, Democrats take power, they advance their gun control agenda, and if they take the Senate and the House again, they're going to try to do it again, after 2018. But Democrats advance the gun control agenda. Then Republicans come in and they say, we're going to defend the Second Amendment. What they mean is they're not going to let the Democrats go any further. So they're like a placeholder. Then the Democrats take power, they advance their agenda again. Then the Republicans take power. And see, they never go back and roll back what had been passed before. So I'm the only one in this race proposing we go back and repeal the federal gun laws that have come in, that have been passed over time. We need to go back and get rid of those, because you have a constitutional right to carry any type of gun that you want, and you have a constitutional right to carry it wherever you want. And I'm also proposing that we abolish the BATFE, which has been harassing gun owners for decades. And on the state level, we need very strong stand your ground laws in all 50 states. So we need to make it very clear, because this whole thing's being politicized right now, what happened in Florida, and they're coming for our guns. But we need politicians that will boldly say that we will never compromise on the Second Amendment even one single inch.
Amen. And John, I know you have a question, but I just dropped something in the Skype chat here. And this is where this is heading. 8 London stabbings in 1 week prompt anti-knife campaign. So we've seen the taking away of guns in Europe and the UK, and this huge rise in crime using knives and other objects, hammers and whatnot. And now we're seeing anti-knife campaigns in the UK. I mean, this is where this is heading. And if we allow them to take our guns, we're really the last and only truly, half-free people in the world. And if they take our guns, there's nothing stopping a new world order takeover, if you say it like that, by our government. And it is the only reason we have the constitutional right for the Second Amendment. It's not to hunt, it's not to target practice, it is to defend against a out of control and tyrannical government. And nobody ever wants to talk about that. But John, go ahead.
Well, thank you, Joe. I want to just comment quickly on the Second Amendment issues as well. Several years ago, after a mass shooting in Australia, Australia almost overnight effectively instituted a nationwide gun ban for everything but a few basic long guns for farmers and ranchers. And it was noted just a short time thereafter, they did a nationwide analysis of their crime statistics, that prior to that gun ban, Michael, you mentioned stronger stand your ground laws. Prior to that gun ban in Australia, they did not have a proper title on the books for a home invasion robbery. And now not only did they have to develop home invasion legislation, but they had to do so because it was up double digits within a 12-month period of time, with people utilizing everything from baseball bats to kitchen knives to overtake one's home and steal from them right in front of them. But Michael, quickly on the Second Amendment, and then I want to talk for a moment about term limits. The Firearms Policy Coalition, they do great work on YouTube and really all over the country, did an excellent piece recently, and I thought this was curious. Did you know, Michael, that one of the biggest problems with the gun buyback programs that liberals love to promote and tout all over our country is that there's actually a subset of individuals in this country who are gun buyback profiteers? And the way it works is simple. They pick up a defunct Saturday night special for $30 or $40 from their neighbor, garage sale, flea market, etc., something with a busted firing pin, a completely unusable weapon. They take it to the gun buyback. They get a $250, $300 Walmart card, and they've just profited $200+. In addition to that, because these gun buyback programs, Michael, are, quote, no questions asked, end quote, oftentimes criminals will take the weapon they used in the commission of a felony up to and including murder, and they sell the weapon back to a police agency, and they get a Walmart card, and the gun gets melted down and the evidence disappears. Can you believe that, Michael?
That is absolutely outrageous. I wasn't aware of that, but nothing surprised me with these big government. And just look at the city of Chicago, where they've got some of the toughest gun control laws in the nation. Violent crime is off the charts. But here in North Idaho, we don't worry about home invasion because everyone's got a gun, and anyone who wanted to make a career of breaking into people's homes would have a very short career indeed. So gun control doesn't work. These liberals are I don't know what they're thinking.
Well, Michael, let's talk quickly about term limits. You've given us a couple of great sound bites already today. You said in your opening comment, we, referring to Congress, we have been stealing $100 million per hour. Now, that's absolutely staggering. You also said, quote, I'm going to Washington to turn the system upside down. And I've always been curious and a little frustrated about term limits and about how what it's like for freshman congressmen coming onto Capitol Hill, of course, for their first time. For our listeners' benefit, I have read repeatedly over the years, Michael, and I want to get your take on this, that the first thing on a freshman congressperson's agenda, the very first order of business, is to start developing your war chest in order to remain in office when you have to run again just 2 short years later. So here's a split question for you. Number one, do you think that the House of Representatives should mimic the Senate and go with longer terms out of the gate? And number two, Michael, where do you stand on term limits?
Well, I'm very in favor of term limits because you got someone like Nancy Pelosi who could run forever as long as they can keep carting her out, but she can hardly put 2 words together at this point. There comes a point where it's just too long and too much, and people should go. And our founding fathers never envisioned these kind of career politicians. But you're right. In terms of people coming into Congress, at orientation as a new member of Congress, I would be told how to spend my day. I'd be told I'm supposed to spend about 2 hours a day on floor/committee, essentially doing my job, and then about 4 hours a day dialing for dollars, raising money. Members of Congress are expected to spend about 4 hours a day. And one of the big reasons for that is because as a freshman member of Congress, I would be expected to raise $200,000 for the NRCC, the National Republican Congressional Committee. And that's just the base level. For example, if you want to chair an A-level committee eventually, you have to raise $1.2 million for the NRCC. And so every day, because they can't make these calls from their offices, members of Congress go across the street to these call centers, one for Republicans, one for Democrats, where they go in and 60 Minutes has actually gotten a hidden camera into the Republican one. And you go in and you sit at your station and you're given a script, and it's a telemarketing script. And they give you information on each person you're calling, whether they're married, what they do, et cetera, if they have kids. And the whole goal is to get as much money out of that person as quickly as you can and move on to the next call. And you're supposed to do that for 4 hours a day, every single day. So you think you're sending a member of Congress to Washington, but you're actually sending a telemarketer, which is absolutely outrageous. And that's why I've pledged that I'm not going to participate in that system. I'm not going to make those phone calls because by law, they can't require you to do that. And there's a few other members of Congress that are bucking the system. And so that's what I intend to do. I promise my voters I'm going to Washington to do the job the people elected me to do. And this is why Congress can't get anything done, because they're all over in the call centers half the day making fundraising calls when they should be doing their job and getting things done for the American people.
Okay, Joe, I know you're going to take the next one, but I just want to reiterate what our guest, Michael Snyder, again, congressional candidate from the great state of Idaho, just said. When you send a freshman congressperson to Capitol Hill, you are in fact sending a well-paid telemarketer because, again, the competition is so fierce. The first order of the day, and you heard it from congressional candidate Michael Snyder, everyone, is to start raising money for your reelection 23 months and change later. Joe, I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, we only have just a few moments with you left, Michael, so I just want to ask you a few questions. One, sanctuary cities. Do you guys have a illegal immigration problem in Idaho, and what's your stance on sanctuary cities?
Yeah, well, there's an illegal immigration problem everywhere. But yeah, we need to end sanctuary cities, start holding the mayors, start holding the city council members, even governors like Jerry Brown accountable for these sanctuary cities. That means people need to start getting arrested and going to prison for making their areas sanctuary cities. We need to shut down the sanctuary cities.
Okay, it really is very simple. And last question, what can people do to best help you? Is it monetary donations? Is it volunteer time? What can they do?
Yeah, well, if you live in the district here, please volunteer, get involved. Go to michaelsnyderforcongress.com, scroll down just a little bit, hit the volunteer tab. We'll get you plugged in. If you live anywhere in the country, please donate in this very close race. You can go to michaelsnyderforcongress.com and donate, or you can go to swampbomb.com, donate there. We're having a special promotion, a money bomb right now. Swampbomb.com. Help us win this race on May 15th.
Excellent. We're going to have you back on the Hagmann Report before you have the primary. Oh, any debates? Did you have to engage in any debates?
Yeah, we've already had one. We are the big winners of the first one in Coeur d'Alene, but we've got one coming up, Ada County, which is where Boise is. Ada County, March 27th. Go to our website for details. It's going to be a big, huge debate.
Excellent, and we'll be keeping
Michael,
our eye.
I'm sorry, Joe. Michael, before we cut you loose, where can people find you on social media? Go ahead and throw out your Facebook, your Twitter. So many people use that for their primary go-to.
Yeah, if you go to Facebook and you just type in Michael Snyder for Congress, that's where you're going to get the latest updates on our campaign. Or if it's facebook.com/Michael Snyder for Congress, it's easy to find. On Twitter, just type in Michael Snyder for Congress, and hopefully you'll find me, although we have been shadow banned, as they've been, censoring conservatives, but we are on Twitter as well. Or then on YouTube, you can just type in Michael Snyder for Congress and you'll find us.
Excellent. And that's one of the things that we'll talk about later, but the censorship campaign is exactly to do that, to help shape the narrative for the midterms and the 2020 presidential election by censoring people who criticize other politicians and politicians themselves. Michael Snyder, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, guys.
All right. That was Michael Snyder. michaelsnyderforcongress.com is the website. We got about 22 minutes left in the show, so we're going to cover some interesting news and stuff that's going on this Friday. Again, today, Friday, March 23rd. We're waiting for what the president is going to do on the spending bill, and I'm sure when people listen to this, they're going to already know, because we record the show 1 hour before we put it on, and right now it's 1:02. And they have a news conference that is going live right now, but I'm not going to be able to. Well, I'll have it up here. I muted it, and if it starts while we're on the air, I guess, John, we can interrupt our program to play that. But it's President Trump participates in bill signing, live stream starting soon. So is he going to sit down and sign the bill? I don't know. We'll see.
I've got a gut feeling that he is, Joe. Now,
yeah.
CNBC.com has the article up. Of course, Trump threatens to veto omnibus spending bill over DACA and the border wall. But I don't know. Call it a gut feeling, Joe. I think that the president is going to sign this. But I want to add and encourage our listeners, please don't be short-sighted or dare I even say hyper-emotional about this issue. Weigh it in the balance. What has President Trump accomplished since taking office versus the mistakes that have been made? We know that all presidents are going to make mistakes, and I'm not necessarily posturing as an apologist for President Trump, Joe, but my major concern, I was going to say primary concern, but I didn't want to pun. My major concern is this idea of the blue wave, and I'll tell you why quickly, and I'll give it back to you, buddy. When in 2012, when Mitt Romney was running against incumbent Barack Obama, we had this meme exploded almost overnight, the war on women. And I remember thinking to myself that sounded so stupid, so ludicrous, the Mitt Romney war on women. What are you talking about? This guy's he's a Mormon who's been married for 30 plus years, and he's got women up and down the corporate ladder of everything he's ever touched. But it had alliteration, it was catchy, and it played a significant role in that election, the Mitt Romney war on women. Joe, this notion of the blue wave cannot be taken lightly. The bottom line is this, and I don't mean to admonish people here today, but the bottom line is this. If conservatives, libertarians, the remnant body of Christians, preppers, constitutionalists, if we don't get off our butts in the fall of this year and protect President Donald Trump, then you've got everything to worry about the following year, because there's a very likely possibility, listeners, that there will be no President Donald Trump. Joe?
Yeah, and it's really unfortunate if he is going to sign this bill. He's going to get a lot of backlash. I don't know that it'll be enough for people not to elect him in 2020. Obviously, that's going to depend on who he runs against. And John, so often we get caught in this trap because of the situation that we're in, of playing these partisan lines. Oh, the left this, the left that, Democrats this. And that's because the Democrats, even though they're as corrupt as the Republicans, but then they take it a step further with their anti-constitutionalist, anti-American extremism. So when we were always, bad-mouthing the left, pointing out the hypocrisy. But I have to say that the people on the right, the people in the House, the people in the Senate that are supporting this bill, that are adding, these un-American provisions and, robbing the taxpayers of their money, all these people have to go. There's only a very few good senators. There's only a few good congressmen. And we have to get the right people in there. And it's not going to be able to be done by voting party lines. It has to be done. It has to be done by going through each candidate, going through their issues, seeing which one lines up with the Constitution, with the government that has been set up, and then wants to also change it. But something happens when people get into office too, it's unaccounted for, is that people become part of the system when they start seeing the personal benefits of enrichment and power, and they become corrupt themselves. So that's another element. Even if you vote the right person in, there's no guarantee that they won't become corrupt themselves. So we are facing an uphill battle in every way, and we're on the way wrong side of it right now.
We are, and Joe, you're exactly correct in that analysis, because I think what happens with a lot of well-intentioned people when they do make it to Congress is a senior member of Congress will sit them down and essentially say, okay, listen here, kid, here's the way it works. You got to give to get. So if you want to play ball, if you want to hit the ball from time to time, make no mistake about it, youngin', you're going to strike out plenty. But if you want to get any wood on the ball at all, you better get it straight right here and right now. You've got to give to get. But Joe, and of course that opens that once an individual makes that decision, you kind of decided to dance with the devil right then and there. But to be clear, imagine this, Joe, and then I'll give it back to you and we can lightning round the news out for the rest of the program today. Imagine this. We've been so frustrated. I think almost all of our listeners, both to the Hagmann Daily Show, Doug Show in the morning, and the evening program, our flagship show, are so frustrated and so bedraggled and irritated and sick of this Mueller dog and pony show. Listeners, please hear me. If the Democrats take the House, they don't even have to take the Senate because they can invoke articles of impeachment. That goes first to the House. So imagine the taxpayers' dollars spent. Imagine the annoyance all through 2019 and into 2020 of watching articles of impeachment get pushed through Capitol Hill simply because people are chapped that the Wicked Witch of everywhere didn't get her coronation, Joe, back in November of 2016. Can you imagine what an impossible national headache, and not only that, what an embarrassment that will be around the world?
Yeah, it would be, but these people are gonna push for this either way. This is what they do. This is who they are, and unfortunately, you have many of these never Trumpers and these on the right who are obstructionists who are in there who despise Donald Trump. Some of them are playing along to score political points. Others are more vocal about their displeasure. But this is why we elected this president. We did not elect this president to come in and go along with the status quo, to be manipulated. We elected this president so he could stand his ground in the face of all this corruption and all this political chaos. And now we are going to wait to see if he's going to sign this bill. Will this happen? I don't know. There is there is a press conference, and a lot of people are. See, President Trump has so much support from his base. He has a lot of latitude in areas where he could screw up or make wrong decisions, like immigration. People are not gonna turn on the president because of 800,000 DACA recipients. But what they will turn on the president for is to go against everything that he stood for, to fund things like Planned Parenthood, to fund things like sanctuary cities, and not get the funding like the border wall, which he wanted, and so many other things that are in here. If he signs this, which I'm afraid he might, just because of the bipartisan political support for this, I don't know. Will it? 1 week from today, 3 weeks from today, obviously people are not going to be as upset. And John, as those calls for impeachment, as the media gets more crazy, people are going to go back to their defense of the president. But he does have a lot of leeway. But I just think he needs to, I don't know, he should veto this bill, sit down with a few lawmakers like Rand Paul and others who believe they can get this done in a much more efficient, much cheaper way without all the garbage. But I don't think that's going to happen. And this is just more of the status quo, the same old, same old. This is not why we elected the president. So there is going to be a lot of pushback from him. And if he does sign this and pass this, you'll see the piling on from the media. I mean, they might. The Stormy Daniels stuff, I don't know how many people have been paying attention to these women who are all over CNN. Now, I agree that what the president's behavior, if he engaged in extramarital affairs, absolutely he was wrong. But this was also, decade ago or more, and this was his personal life. And not that, see, what CNN and the left doesn't understand is they think because the president is an imperfect man, they can exploit those imperfections, especially with his Christian base, and say, see, you can't be a Christian if you support the president after he said this or after he did this. But they don't understand.
They'll exploit it, Joe, because they've successfully done so many times in the past. And I would just remind our listeners, you're listening to two less than perfect men right now, and you do every day on the Hagmann Daily Show. Listen, folks, let's not play small ball here. Let's keep our eye on the bigger picture. Now, Joe, you mentioned a moment ago that President Trump has got a significant amount of political capital right now, and he does. I would dare say that a position less favorable to his base regarding, for example, immigration, or perhaps even Second Amendment rights, he could get away with. But President Trump was identified, in my opinion, by two primary things. Number one, build the wall. And number two, he has been on the American public scene for 4 decades as this real estate magnate throwing up stone and glass in cities all over the world. And he's known, number one name of the game, as a savvy business operator who does what? The art of the deal. So this budget situation is not, in my opinion, a minor faux pas, if you will. Nonetheless, we can't take our eyes off the big picture. And the big picture, Joe, as you're so consistent in pointing out, is that the liberals, the secular progressives, the reprobates in this country, they never stop. They are restless. They move incrementally and in perpetuity. And if we give them so much as one toe in the door, the Antifa crowds are going to crash the door right in on top of us. And then we can all sit on our sanctimonious backsides and say, well, President Trump had an affair 30 some odd years ago, and I cannot condone that. I will not condone it. Well, congratulations. Hillary's waiting on the stage right.
Yeah, and that's how what they want. They want that reaction, but I think it's pretty telling that despite the constant barrage of porn stars and call girls and whatever else whoever else they're bringing on over there, it's such a joke. Nobody is paying attention to it. See, they continue 24/7 with this garbage, and while the majority, 90% of the American people could care less, but they just never stop, And Mark Dice did a great video this morning highlighting some of their insanity. And, really what's interesting about all these cases is that, these women engaged in a consensual sexual relationship with Donald Trump, and all signed non-disclosure agreements. Now it's so funny that CNN is parading them around, and they're playing as some kind of victim, like they didn't know what they were doing and didn't know what they were signing. I heard this woman today, I want the rights to my life back. I want to be able to tell my story. Well, you should have thought of that before you took money and signed a non-disclosure agreement.
Boo hoo hoo. Let me
legally on the hook. They're legally on, and CNN keeps bringing these women on, and is CNN going to pay the legal fees for violating their non-disclosure agreements? I don't think so. And those things are legally binding, and I don't know.
Not only that, but let's have a measure of integrity about where the funds come from. If you take the money, like you said, Joe, you're on the hook. Now, there's a very well-known talk show host, I won't name names, but his wife recently called his enormous following a quote-unquote cult. And I tweeted out promptly, if you are so concerned about this perceived cult, with all due respect, ma'am, return the $43,000 a month that the cult is currently paying you.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. And I mean, we don't have to talk about this anymore, but it's just these people are looking for any and everything to throw at this president, and they don't understand that the people who voted for him don't care about what he did 10 years ago. They only care about how he is going to continue to make changes to the status quo and for the American people with his position as president, and they could care less about this stuff. And it's not, see, the difference between Bill Clinton and President Trump is Bill Clinton was a sexual predator, accused of multiple rapes and sexual assaults. So there's nobody here, claiming anything crazy. This was all consensual, and even though they were extramarital affairs and very unethical, obviously, I would not condone that ever. But the left doesn't understand that the people have a deeper love for President Trump because he is somebody who really, they feel, represents them and is doing the things that no other politician in his position would ever do. So it's going to take a lot more than extramarital affairs from 10 years ago or even yesterday to get his base to turn on him. He's his own worst enemy in that regard, if we're being truthful. So, and signing this bill would be, very problematic, as we said. I want to. Well,
Joe, we're real quick. I just want to put a fine point on your commentary. We just took one step back in November of 2016 from the precipice of national destruction, period, of national destruction, of implosion of our economy and perpetual undeclared wars where we go drop heavy ordnance on innocent people and we smoke them when they're trying to get married, something that none of our listeners support, regardless of where you're at in your faith walk or your spiritual life. Now, let's not be judge, jury, and executioner on the president here. First of all, these are allegations that Brian Stelter and his ilk are going to get to the bottom of. But no one among us is perfect, and we need to keep our eye on the big picture. We have taken a single step back from the precipice of national implosion, starting with the economy. If this is a silly analogy, but if I'm a victim of a home invasion and two cops come through my front door and shoot the perpetrators, Joe, I'm not going to be too concerned if those cops have proper oral hygiene in their recent past.
Right. And just to finalize this whole CNN and what they're trying to do with the Stormy Daniels, there's a piece on the Daily Caller that really made me smile. Dude who claimed sex with Obama is livid at media's obsession with Stormy Daniels. The man who once claimed, without evidence, to have sex with former President Barack Obama is now livid that the media and public are believing adult film star Stormy Daniels' relationship with President Trump. Larry Sinclair, a 50-something-year-old man, alleged he had sexual relations with Obama in 1999. The story included a limousine, cocaine, and a host of other interesting tidbits. There are few reports of the incident because Sinclair could never provide hard evidence, and he has a very long rap sheet. But he goes on to say that he's upset because Stormy Daniels is being pimped and pimping the media now, and it's lining her pockets, St. Clair told the Washington Examiner. I believe she had sex with him. Do I believe she's trying to twist and add it to benefit her interest? You're damn right I do. I find this whole double standard sickening. I am not a big supporter of Trump. I'm a big supporter of fair and unbiased media coverage. I find the whole NDA and accepting money and then later coming back and using a completely legal incident for political and personal gain questionable. And I think that's so funny. We've had Larry Sinclair on our show, and if folks who are unfamiliar with the very terrible history with President Obama, anybody do a quick search on YouTube or for the Down Low Club, there were 3 men who were all shot and executed who were part of this homosexual church group that the Jeremiah Wright at his church where Obama attended. And they were all connected to Obama, and they were all killed in a very close proximity to either his election or I'm not sure how the timing of that went, but there's a lot of suspect things that are in the past, but
perhaps Obama had to go have a talk on the tarmac somewhere with old Bill and get some of their button men put together to take care of his dirty laundry. But quickly, Joe, and this will be my final comment for today, Friday, March 23rd. We have a great program tonight on the Hagmann Report. I just received confirmation from one of the publicists we work with, Bill McIntosh. Joe, we will have our first Breitbart reporter on this evening. This is a debut guest, Brandon Darby, again from Breitbart. And then, of course, in the second hour, Doug and Joe Hagmann will interview Hagmann favorite Patrick Wood, technocracy.news. And then in the third hour this evening, Joe, you and I are going to take the interview with Mark Goodwin, who joined us a few weeks ago on the Daily Show from Prepper Recon.
Yeah, and that sounds like it's going to be great. Just a few things here before we sign off for the week. HagmannReport.com. Check out some of the stories there. One we talked about a few weeks ago. Growing questions about CNN's airport monopoly as network veers left. CNN's presence in airports, where it broadcasts from thousands of screens, captivating audience of millions, is facing new scrutiny after the cable network's hard left turn. CNN Airport Network dates back to when CNN was known for straightforward news and programming, and has been a fixture at airports since before competitors MSNBC and Fox News even existed. But critics are now asking if the busy travelers should be subjected to CNN's increasingly ideological programming. At gates, bars, food courts, baggage claims, which can include on-screen or subtitles, and that gleefully mock the president. Many travelers have even taken to Twitter to start online petitions to urging airports to changing the channel. At Newsbusters, the Media Research Center, Vice President Dan Gaynor told Fox News that CNN has become more partisan than MSNBC since Trump moved into the White House. Now, what's going on with CNN and the airports? They detail this, and there's lots of details in this report, but it talks about how in one airport, long-term contracts typically give CNN the ability to curate content seen by travelers whether they like it or not. The 8-year contract was signed in 2016, promises the Miami International Airport, as an example, a maximum annual guarantee of $150,000 that may be adjusted annually to ensure the deal is on par with similar airports. So this is just one example. In 2016, CNN paid Miami International Airport $150,000 at minimum, plus the cost for the TVs and maintenance, to keep the channel on the air. And this is, they say, a CNN airport media kit says a whopping 323 million people view CNN airport on an annual basis at the 2,400 plus gates throughout the country. So is this unfair monopoly? And Jeff Zucker, he went on, the president of CNN, did an interview yesterday where he said CNN was one of the only fair and trusted news agencies in the country, whereas Fox News was state-run propaganda network. I thought that was hilarious, seeing how CNN is no better than a tabloid newspaper or TV show at this point.
They do have Brian Stelter.
Exactly, that's the problem, and many others who are just like, if not worse than Brian. So that'll do it for us today. I hear the outro music playing. SimplyCleanFoods.net is our sponsor. Use the promo code SimplyClean. Check out their alt media packs, We're going to talk more about those next week for sure, as the owner is going to come on for about 5 or 10 minutes after they return from a conference. So we're going to have a chance on next week too. And it was a great week, John. I want to say thanks to everybody. One more show tonight, and that'll do it for us for the weekend. We'll see you back on Monday.
The Hagmann Daily Show is brought to you by the Hagmann Report. Tune in to the Hagmann Report weekdays, 7 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. For more information, go to HagmannReport.com. That's HagmannReport.com.